Wait, we lost. Wait,
Okay, and
oh, there's Diane.
here we are. So, all right, all the way down at the end, the last full line. You notice we have a double pause, a shva and an aleph.
Where are you, Rabbi?
Where are you? Show us.
Okay.
Oh, that's the Reuven.
So therefore, it would be technically Reuven.
Reuven.
You've got to make up, Reuven would be no shva and aleph.
Right.
So you have to think Reuven.
Reuven.
What do you mean a double pause?
A shva is a pause and an aleph is a pause.
Oh, I thought you meant when you're in that space. I thought you were talking about the space being something. Okay.
Yeah, no, you have to pause between the resh and the u.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Will you say again when, oh, I'm not gonna find one easily, when it's, at the one I see first is virtually above where it says 5. The
Okay,
word just, when is it,
Anochi.
al, cha, and when is it ach? You
Ah.
said some, you reversed it.
oh, the ach is only when it's the chet and the patach at the end. If you had,
You have it somewhere here.
so for example, in this
Yeah, there it
word
is.
here, if the line was under the chet at the end, as it is in the word mizbeach, which is an altar, it's not mizbecha, but mizbeach. So it's only this very specific combination of the chet and the under it at the end of a word. But all of the chafs with the are just straightforward.
Thank you.
Okay, so they finally convinced Dad. They went home with all the wagons and all the stuff that Egypt sent up to them. Convinced Dad that it couldn't have come from anybody other than his son that he hasn't seen for some 30 years. And Vayisa Yisrael, now he's Yisrael. Vayisa Yisrael, v'chol asher lo, vayavo be'era shava, vayizbach zvachim le'elohei aviv Yitzchak. So now, along their journey, they come back to Beersheba, which keeps playing out in the patriarchal stories. So they're traveling from wherever he's currently settled, and they make a stop at the Beersheba rest stop along the pike. So they journey by Yisai Yisrael. Now Israel journeys, and it's no longer his sons taking him, but he's journeying. And it doesn't say specifically he's going with the whole family. It just says, Vayisai Yisrael v'chol asher lo, and Israel journeyed and everything that was to him, that is to him, all that he had. Vayavo, and again singular, Yisrael, only Yisrael comes, Be'er Shava, Be'era Shava, Be'era, that remember that Haste gives us directionality. He's coming to, or literally toward, but he comes Be'er Sheva word. So he approaches, he comes to, he gets to Beersheba, Vayizbach Zavachim, and he sacrificed sacrifices. He offered offerings. He altered altars. Because the Mizbeach is the word for an altar, a place upon which sacrifices are done. So these are the things that are placed upon the sacrificial place.
Vayizva is the offering.
Right. So Vayizbach
Offer the
is the
offering.
verb,
Yeah.
Zvachim is the things, and Mizbeach, same root, is the place where you do it.
Yeah.
So we don't really have in English a good word that covers all of those. He altered the alterings on the altar.
I love it.
So he offered up sacrifices of sacrifices, and if Mezbeach were in there, it would be on the sacrificial place.
Mm.
And he does it Lelohe Aviv Yitzchak, to the God or gods of his father Isaac.
Why is that Elohe different than the other ones?
Well, which other ones?
Well, Elohim is
Well,
the
Elohe is the connected
singular?
form, the gods of.
Okay, God's
Banim
love.
is sons, B'nai is sons of.
Okay,
So Elohe is Elohim Shel, God of.
okay, thank you.
But why is that not singular?
Because Elohim is a plural noun. However,
Yeah, okay.
it refers to the
Okay.
God of the blue story.
Got it.
So again, we don't know for sure at this point in biblical history whether they are into their pure monotheism or they are into sort of a pantheon that is as if it was one. So is God Elohim plural because it's the cumulative aspects of all of the God, or is it still sort of the gods?
Isn't it nice it's not explained?
Yes. The footnotes are lost. The annotated Bible from 3,000 years ago is no longer extant.
Well, and the idea is it this or that? The answer is yes.
Of course. And the beauty of combined texts is the God is both Elohim and Yud-He Vav-He.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the stories, it was not the same, necessarily the same entity.
Mm.
But notice it's the gods of his father Yitzchak.
Mm-hmm.
There is not an Avraham in this story.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of offering a sacrifice to the God of Yitzchak harkens back, way, way back, to a story of the parsha of this past week, which was the birth of Jacob and Esau. And in the next chapter, in chapter 26, immediately after the birth of Jacob and Esau and the whole porridge selling of the birthright, the next story is, and there was a famine in the land. And then the text actually says, this is not to be confused with the famine that was the famine when Abraham was around.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that you know that we're not talking about the same story, even though we probably are talking about the same story. Because
I don't understand. What does that have to do with that we're referring to the God of
because at that point, if you will recall, Abraham had faced two famines. And one famine, he went down to Egypt for sustenance.
Mm-hmm.
And the second famine, he went westward to the coast to Gerar for sustenance from the famine. And Abraham dealt with a king Avimelech. In this past week's Torah portion, Yitzchak faces a famine, and he goes to Avimelech because God says to him, do not leave this land in which you are currently dwelling. In other words, don't go down to Egypt. And God very specifically says to Yitzchak, do not go to Egypt. Do not leave this Canaanite confines area, which included the coastal region of Gerar. And now Yaakov is about to go to the land that his father was told don't go to. So Yaakov, by offering a sacrifice to the God of his father Yitzchak, is saying, God, I got a problem here. There's a conflict. You told Dad never to go down to Egypt. And now my son is saying, come on down to Egypt. What do I do, God? And thus we have the answer in verse 2 and forward.
Well, that part is not stated, right? That's in his head, you think?
Right, and that's why would he offer a sacrifice in Beersheba on his way down to Egypt? And why, upon offering the sacrifice, would God say to him in verse 2, which we're going to come to?
Just for safe passage.
Very possibly. In which case,
They
God
Weren't they
doesn't
always,
need.
weren't they always offering sacrifices?
Absolutely. But then we wouldn't need verses 2 and 3. If it was simply a prayer for safe passage, we could have gone straight to page 4, where verse 4, where God will say, don't worry, I'll go down with you and I'll be with you and I'll come back up with you.
Hmm.
But God specifically says, so let's go on to verse 2. Vayomer Elohim liYisrael b'mar'ot halayla, Vayomer Yaakov, Yaakov, Vayomer Hineni. So he offers a sacrifice, and we are not told in verse 1 what his prayer with the sacrifice is. Simply, he goes to the ancestral area of Beersheba, and he offers a sacrifice. And one could say for well-being, for travels, for safety, say, hey, God, I'm off to Egypt. We don't know what he's doing with the sacrifice. But the response in verse 2 is Vayomer Elohim. So God says to him, LiYisrael. And now again, he's Yisrael.
Mm-hmm.
And God says it, B'mar'ot halayla, in a vision of the night.
Mar'ot is a vision.
Well, look, the root is ro'eh, seeing.
Yeah.
So a seeing of the night, a vision of the night. And it doesn't say in a dream. And we often have God showing up in dreams. But here it's not in a dream, but it's in a night vision.
Mm-hmm. Oh, my Lord.
A mar'ot halayla, a vision of the night. And God says, Vayomer, Yaakov, Yaakov. So God says this to Yisrael, but God says, Yaakov, Yaakov.
So that's interesting that he's saying Yaakov instead of,
Exactly.
Yeah.
The author tells us that God is talking to Yisrael, but when God talks, God says Yaakov. And this is the same God who many chapters earlier said, from now on, you will never be known as Yaakov, you will only be known as Yisrael, except when I'm talking to you. Vayomer Hineni, and Yaakov's response, Yisrael's response is simply, I am here.
Mm.
Here I am.
Behold, behold me. So apparently he has no surprise that he has this night vision of God calling him.
Mm.
This is the second time, by the way, in the Torah, second out of 3, and the second out of 4 times in the entire Tanakh where God addresses a person by their name twice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The first was Abraham.
Mm-hmm.
This is now Yaakov. Later will be Moshe. And then the final time will be Shmuel.
Mm.
So naturally, since there are 4 unique times within the entire Tanakh, the rabbis have to explain to us what's up with this double name. And you get many midrashim trying to connect something in those 4 events that would have been a double call. We won't get into those, but there's a lot of stories, midrashim, about it. So what does God say? Verse 3, Vayomer, God says, Anochi ha'el Elohei avicha, I am the God of your father. As if Yaakov was expecting, or Yisrael was expecting somebody else to answer the call. Since we're told specifically that he offered the sacrifice to the God of his father. So Yaakov dials the number that's in his father's black book, and God answers and says, "Yep, God of your father here. What can I do for you?" And he says, Al tira merda mitzrayma. Al tira, do not be afraid. And again, that yara root is translated as fear, but also as awe. I like to call trembling. But somehow do not have a strong averse reaction, merda mitzrayma, to going down to Egypt. And that becomes part of then the commentary that I gave at the beginning of why would he have any fear or trepidation or trembling or awe of going down to Egypt, if not for the chapter 20 chapters earlier, when his father was specifically told, don't go there.
Why does Mitzrayim become Mitzrayim?
Mitzrayim is directionality toward Egypt. The hay is always the going toward something, the direction of Egypt. Don't go Egyptward.
Well, it's the ma on the end, not the me in the front.
Right. Mitzrayim is the name.
Yeah.
Me would be Mitzrayim.
Right.
And
Okay.
Mitzrayim is translated etymologically as Mitzra, from the narrow place. But it's Mitzrayim, and then Mitzrayim, like up here we had Be'era Shava. And we'll have Artsah. But Mitzrayim is south, down to Egypt. And why would Yaakov, Yisrael, have had trepidation about going down to Egypt when he's now sent all of his sons down there twice?
And one didn't come back.
Well, but others came back with a big explanation about the fact that there are actually two down there.
I'm not sure he believes his kids anymore.
But the other explanation is the trepidation comes from he himself personally can't go down because his father wasn't allowed to go down. But remember, he's willing to sacrifice his kids throughout a good portion of his story. Way back in the confrontation with Esav, remember, he puts the maidservant's children in front, and then Leah's children and Leah, and then he keeps Rachel and Joseph with him in the back safely. And he sends his sons down, except he won't let Benjamin go until finally he has no choice. So he has some problems with his children, but then, of course, his father and mother had some problems with their children, with favoritism.
Yeah.
But God says, do not be afraid. Do not have any trepidation about going down toward Egypt. Ki legoy gadol asimcha sham. For to a nation of greatness, a goy gadol, a great nation, a big nation, asimcha sham, I will put you there. So you're going down to become a manyness.
Rabbi, the goy part.
Goy is a nation.
No, I know, but I mean the pronunciation instead of what you made it Lagoy instead of Lagoy.
Because you have remember that
Yud,
those vowels ah and o and u at the end of a word with a yud actually make the yud part of the vowel.
okay, Lagoy.
A and E we didn't have to worry about because they always are.
Okay, thank you.
So
Rabbi,
this is
if Goy is nation, where did the expression the Goyim mean non-Jewish come
the Goyim are the other nations,
But not us.
right?
But he's
We
saying,
are an we are a people. They are a Goy. They are a nation.
but here he says he's gonna make
Because Because Goyim comes from the later rabbinic and Ashkenazic experience, not from the biblical experience.
The biblical is more Jewish and the later one is not.
Well, if you will recall, post Second Temple, the Jews are never a nation, they're only a people. Everybody else is a nation.
So that's when it changed from being an
That's when it sort of changes in that Am Yisrael, people of Israel, but Goy Yavan, the nation of Greece.
What was the year?
Goyim
what were the
became
years of the
those who
second-
are nations, and Am is us who are a people.
Do you know what the years of the Second Temple were?
Yes, the Second Temple was built in the end of the 6th century before the Common Era, around 516 BCE, and was destroyed in the year 70 of the Common Era.
Mhm.
And that's when Israel loses its nationhood for the next almost 2,000 years.
Oh, so it lost it at the destruction of the Second Temple.
Yes, when the Second Temple was destroyed, so was the nation of Israel.
So that's why it goes from nation to people?
Exactly. We become a people who live among the nations
Because we didn't have a nation.
because we did not have a nation till 1948.
Wow.
Okay, interesting.
But biblically, Goy is just a nation. And Yisrael, and his children are not yet a nation.
Hmm.
They need to go down to Egypt to become an actual nation. A nationality of Bnei Yisrael, rather than a family, expanded family entity. So you're going down to Egypt in order that you will be a Goy Gadol. I'm going to make for you, I'm going to put you there an actual nation.
Took a little time.
And remember that when they leave Egypt, coming up at some point in Exodus when we get to it, they will not only leave with the families that have grown out of the sons of Jacob, of Israel, but there will be the Eruv Rav, the mixed multitude that go along with them. So they become now an assimilated group of peoples under the banner of Yisrael, and no longer simply the families. Verse 4. Anochi ered imcha Mitzrayma, va'anochi a'alcha gam alo, v'Yosef yashit yado al einecha. So anochi, I ered, I will go down. So the I will go down is part of the verb ered. I will go down, ered, imcha, with you. But instead of saying ered imcha, which would be sort of the shorter, more informal, it's anochi ered imcha. I will go down with you. I, in my own divine self, my divinity, will go down with you, Mitzrayma, to Egypt, toward Egypt. Va'anochi, and I, in my I-ness, a'alcha. So a'al is I will bring up, a'alcha, I will bring you up. And notice again, this is still singular. This is only between God and Yaakov Yisrael. So I will bring you up. Gam alo, also in the going up. And as you will know later in the story, Yaakov Yisrael never in his lifetime goes back up. His body is brought back up. And this again might be part of the orators, the authors, and the audience's awareness I will be going back up with you even in your dead body.
Mm.
So a'alcha gam alo, I will go up with you, or I will bring you up in your bringing up. So I'll be there with you when you go down, and I'll be there with you when you go up. And we're not told whether God will also stay down there with the offspring. And then, apparently intended to comfort Yaakov, he says, God says, V'Yosef yashit yado al einecha, and Joseph will put his hand on your eyes.
Mm.
Yeah,
Which
don't.
is done after the last breath.
So your sheet is to put?
Right, it's a form of pudding that becomes more intimate rather than just asim.
How does do become his hand?
Yad is hand, O is his.
Oh, O is his?
O is his except when it's Av.
It's the conjugation of it.
In other words, it would be Yadav if it was his hands.
Mm.
But Yado is his hand. He's only going to put one hand to close his eyes after his last breath.
Wow.
So Joseph will be the one to be there with you at your deathbed. It's the statement of comfort to Yaakov going down to Egypt. The good news in that is we're not told, and he's not told in this vision of the night, how long he'll be down in Egypt before that happens. Which is part of an old Jewish joke about the man who is concerned about his afterlife and goes to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe communes with God, and the Rebbe says, God has noted your good works, God has noted your righteousness, and yes, after you die, you will live in paradise at God's right hand. And the man says, this is good news. And then the Rebbe said, the bad news is you're going tonight.
No.
Hi.
So you're going to go down there, and shortly after you get there, Joseph's going to put his hands on your eyes. We're not given a time frame, fortunately. So having received that assurance that he can go down, unlike his father, that God will be with him throughout his journey down and back up. Vayakom Yaakov mi Be'ersheva, and Yaakov arises from Beersheva. So he got what he needed. And then if you go to verse 6, Vayikhu et miknehem, and now having received that assurance, he apparently goes back to his children and he says, all right, kids, it's okay. God gave me the okie dokie. Let's go. And they go. In between, left over from last week's red story, when his sons have finally convinced him, and he looked and he sees all of the wagons and everything, we have this little leftover from the end of the red story, the rest of verse 5. Vayis'u v'nei Yisrael et Yaakov avihem ve'et tapam ve'et nishehem ba'agalot asher shalach paro laseit oto. Vayis'u, and they carried, they bore v'nei Yisrael, the they is the b'nei Yisrael, the sons of Yisrael, et Yaakov, they then carried Yaakov, Avihem, their father, the et tapam, and their little ones, the et nishehem, and their women, ba'agalot, in the wagons, asher shalach paro, that Pharaoh had sent, laseit oto, to carry him, to bear him.
Wow.
What a sentence.
And here it's
You
again,
put to carry them. You put to carry them.
well, yeah, it's actually oto, carry him.
Oh,
But
okay.
it's the carry him, but the carrying is also done with their little ones and their women. So you could also translate it to carry it, that is the assemblage.
So it's interesting that they carry the sons of Israel to Yaakov. I mean, it's funny that they're mixing the two in the same sentence like that.
Well, no, the Bnei Yisrael is the subject of Vayisa'u, the they carried.
Okay.
Yaakov is the
Carried.
subject, is the object, the direct object. So they, that is parentheses, the sons of Israel, carried Yaakov.
Yes.
And
Esau.
just a note about the word tapam here at the end. Tapam often indicates the idea that the whole family is going. Because if you're bringing the little ones, then you're bringing all the things that the little one needs, which means their milk nurses and their mothers and their siblings. But even down to the littlest ones are being carried in the wagon.
Hmm.
So back to 6. Vaikhu et miknehem ve'et ruchusham asher rachshu be'eretz Canaan vayavo'u Mitzrayma Yaakov v'chol zar'o ito. So now we're back to plural. We had Yaakov, Yisrael, had the single encounter with God, gets the okie dokie from God, and now says to the sons, all right, God says it's okay, God's going to be with us, let's go. So Vaikachu, and they took now Miknehem, their cattle,
McNahan. Oh,
Rechusham, their possessions, and it's all of the possessions, Asher Rachshu be'eretz Canaan. So the things that they acquired, the rechush is the things they acquired, and the rachshu is the verb that they acquired. So the possessions that they possessed in the land of Canaan. So while they were there, they've created some wealth, and they take it now with them. Vayavo'u Mitzrayma, and they came toward Egypt. They come Egyptward. And who is the they? The they is Yaakov, the Chol Zar'o, and all of his seed, Ito,
oh,
with him.
hello.
So Yaakov and all of his offspring, all of his seed, are now going with him down towards coming down to Egypt.
So why would they switch for tapam the zaro?
The Zar'o includes his children and his little ones.
Right,
All-
but why did they change the word from tapam?
Well, Tapam is part of the sons and the little ones and the women.
They change it because it's the different stories, the Y versus the
That's also, notice we've gone from red to blue.
Yeah.
So, because
Yeah.
otherwise they basically mean the same things, don't they?
Well, Tapam indicates the whole family,
Yeah.
Oh, Tapam.
but Tapam, remember, is connected to the previous last week's story, the red stuff.
Okay.
So now they take all their possessions and they go down to Egypt, and the they is Yaakov and all of his offspring with him. And verse 7 now is, who are all of the Zar'o? And we're going to get some very strange statements in verse 7. Banav uvenei vanav ito, benotav uvenot banav, l'chol Zar'o, hevi ito Mitzrayma. So Banav, his sons, Uvenei Vanav, and the sons of his sons, with him. Benotav, his daughters, Uvenot Banav, and the daughters of his sons. The Chol Zar'o, and all of his seed. So we know who his sons are. We're going to learn about who the sons of his sons are. We're going to learn about the sons of the daughters of his family. The question is, benotav, his daughters. How many daughters does Yaakov have
One.
that
One,
we know of that's named?
Dina.
We only have one named daughter.
Yeah.
According to the rabbis, this teaches us that each one of his sons was born as a fraternal twin with a daughter.
What?
Well, how did they get that?
Some rabbis,
Because
some
all of a
rabbis.
sudden, Yaakov has benotav, his daughters.
Oh, daughters, and not just one daughter.
We haven't
Not just
seen
one
him for a
daughter.
long time. We haven't seen him for a long time. We don't know what else he's doing.
Exactly. We have
Yeah.
no story of any daughters being born other than Dinah.
Well, most daughters don't have a story attached to them, but she has a story. So maybe
Although we
that's
do,
why she's
when
noted.
people had daughters, we do get statements that there were daughters born.
Hmm.
They
They
took
just
creative
named.
license. They took creative license with this story.
Or, if you want, since it's Midrash, he adopted all of his daughters-in-law as daughters.
Yeah.
Every time a son got married, they took that woman out of whatever tribe, people's place that those daughters were from, and became part of the Yaakov family. And Yaakov said, "You're not just a daughter-in-law to me, you're a daughter."
Mm.
But no inheritance rights, were there? For the daughters?
Well, notice that,
dowries.
I
Limited.
don't know.
yes, notice that the granddaughters are not the granddaughters of the daughters, but the granddaughters of the sons. They're benot banav, the daughters
Yeah.
of his sons.
Yeah, the daughters of the sons. Oh,
Oh, that makes a difference.
We have the sons of the sons and the daughters of the sons.
the son.
So yeah, the women are not quite equal.
Mm.
And all of his seed, which midrashically could indicate that there's something more than just sons and daughters. So we have no idea what the seed is, unless it's simply the recapitulation of the Chol Zaro before the list, remembering again that in the Torah there's no break and verse 7.
Well, there's no punctuation. In English, we would put a semicolon.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
It was
The
just
Chol
an
Zaro
emphasis.
ito, banav uvnei vanav ito, benotav uvenot banav, v'chol Zaro. So the v'chol Zaro at the beginning and the end of that list becomes the parenthetical statement of what is in the middle.
Hmm.
But whatever it is that he brought, Hevi, he brought, caused to come, Ito, with him, Mitzrayma. Again, notice in the red story, his sons are taking him down. In the blue story, he's taking his sons down.
Mm.
In the red story, the sons put him on the wagon and take him and everything else. In the blue story, he checks with God. God says it's okay, and he takes all of them. They take their cattle and their families, but he takes them. He's the leader of the group, not the born by the group.
Mm.
And now we get, in typical Blue E fashion, we get genealogies. The Eila Shemot B'nai Yisrael Haba'im Mitzrayma Yaakov Uvanav Bechor Yaakov Reuven. So the Eila Shemot B'nai Yisrael, and these are the names of the sons of Israel. Haba'im Mitzrayma. Ba'im is coming. Haba'im thus is the coming. The ones who came, or the ones who come. Like Hamotzi, the bringing forth, becomes the one who brings forth. And this is the names of these are the names of all of the children of Israel that come down to Egypt. Yaakov uvanav, Yaakov and his sons. Bechor Yaakov Reuven, the firstborn of Yaakov Reuven. Uvenei Reuven, Chanoch, Ufalu, the Chetzron, the Charmi. So the sons of Reuven over these past 30 years are now Chanoch and Falu and Chetzron and Charmi. So anybody who's a firstborn and looking to name their child, here's a couple of good names to pick from.
Right.
Hey, Chanoch, time to go to your education, which is Chanoch.
Is this supposed to really read the firstborn of Yaakov and Reuven? Because
No, and the firstborn is Reuven.
Reuven, yeah. Reuven.
Oh,
Firstborn, Reuven.
Bakor is firstborn?
Bechor is firstborn.
Where does that come from? Do we see that root anywhere else?
Yes. We had it when Esav and Yaakov were arguing, and Yaakov goes to steal the blessing of the Bechorah, the firstborn blessing.
But it doesn't have anything to do with giving birth, or
No,
it has, no.
it's just the eldest.
Yeah. Hmm.
And the root of Bechorah, firstbornness, is the word letters of Bechorah are the same letters as bracha,
Oh,
just
yeah.
for your range.
Yeah.
Bechorah is an anagram of bracha,
Mhm.
which may have nothing to do with itself other than wonderful midrash.
Yeah, because the firstborn gets screwed a lot, doesn't get blessed.
Well, the firstborn loses out to the nextborn
Yeah,
after Avraham.
there's not much of a blessing.
No, Avraham was a firstborn.
Yeah, but what happened to the other guys? So
And
They stayed home.
Shem, the ancestor of Avraham, was the firstborn. So up through Avraham, the firstborn gets the birthrights, gets the primogeniture. After Avraham, the Torah switches it out and says, not going to happen again. Esav, Ishmael doesn't get it. Esav doesn't get it. Reuven doesn't get it. Even the firstborn of Yosef doesn't get it. If you will find, as you will see in Ephraim and Manasseh, Aaron doesn't get it, goes to Moshe.
So they,
Aaron's sons don't get it because they die in the gunpowder explosion. So Ruvu and the sons of Ruvain, Chanoch and Falu and Chetzron and Charmi.
so they replaced the Chaf and the Resh from firstborn and blessed.
Yes, that's what I said. Bechorah and Bracha are anagrams of each other.
Yeah, really interesting.
And when we were talking about giving birth, was the verb something like yelda?
Well, yes,
Give child. like to
Yoled. That's the birth.
Yoled.
That's the childing.
Yelde?
Yalad is the
Yeah.
root, and
Yelda.
it's the word for childing, creating a child.
Yelda.
Yeled, Yalda, Yoled, Nolad. We get it in a lot of different forms.
Mhm.
All right, next week.
Can I ask a question about grammar? Is there no verb to be in Hebrew?
In the
The
present
here?
tense. There is no verb to be in the present tense. Well, there is, but it isn't used.
Mhm.
In Adon Olam, v'hu haya, v'hu hoveh, v'hu yihiyeh. God was, God is, God will be. And hoveh would be the present tense of is, to be. However,
Used in
never used.
Hmm.
except when you read God's name as Yehovah.
Mm.
Mhm.
So
Huh.
the verb to be is understood in biblical text, but does appear in the past, haya, haita, in the future, yihya, nihya, ehya.
But the same in modern Hebrew, isn't that the case?
Modern Hebrew doesn't use the verb to be in the present tense either,
Yeah.
derived from the biblical. And you think about it, in English, it's really is, as, is, are not really necessary for the understanding of a sentence.
I
Yeah.
hungry.
Yeah,
It's just the kids don't use it.
Oh, that's so true.
hunger me. All right, next week. Plenty of blue since we've got names. It's all names down to verse 17, verse 18, where you'll hear Ela B'nai, B'nai Rachel, verse 20.
Funny.
And here it is. Vayivaled, and birthed.
And birthed.
That's the root.
Huh.
So Bechor is a specific, Sair is the youngest. Bechor, there are terms for birth order that don't have the word birth in them.
Mhm.
So here, in case you need to offer some names to people who are looking for good biblical names, here's an entire section of good ancestral names. Uvenei Shimon, Yemuel, V'Yamin, V'Ohad, V'Yachin, V'Tzohar, V'Shaul, Ben HaKanaanit. And you'll notice Shaul has a special title, which is not necessarily complimentary. Verse 11, Uvenei Levi, Gershon, Kahat, Umerari. One of the things we'll comment on next week is when there's a vav and when there isn't a vav. What does that indicate in the text, and what can that indicate for midrash? So you can see that as you go along as well. Verse 12, Uvenei Yehuda, va'onan, v'shelach, uvaferetz, vazarach, vayamot va'onan be'eretz Canaan, vayihiyu v'nei peretz, chetzron, v'chamul. Now you have grandchildren. 13, Uvenei Yisha. Now, Yisachar is usually the way it's pronounced, but you'll notice it's actually spelled Yisaschar.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no shva put in there by the vocalizers telling you not to pronounce it. But since there's no vocalization in the text, we don't know if it was Yisachar or Yisaschar.
Mm.
But we say now Yisachar. Tola, Ufuva, V'yov, V'shimron. Uvenei Zevulun, Sered, V'elon, V'yach Le'el. Ela b'nei Leah, Asher Yalda L'Yaakov, V'fadan Aram, V'et Dina. Hey, she's back. Kol Nefesh Banav, Uvenotav, again plural, Shloshim V'shalosh. So we get a count of the Leah side of the family. Uvenei Gad, Sifyon, V'chagi, Shuni, V'etzbon, Eri, V'aharodi, V'ar'eli. Uvenei Asher, Yimna, V'yishva, V'yishvi, not very creative in the naming of his kids. Uveria, V'serach, Achotam, Uvenei, Viria, Hever, Umalkiel. Ela b'nei Silpa, asher natan Levan leleah vito, vateled et ela liYaakov, shesh esrim nafesh. So we're giving now the Leah tribe, the Tzilpa tribe, we're getting all the tribes. 19, Bnei Rachel, Eshet Yaakov, Yosef Uvinyamin. Vayivaled liYosef be'eretz Mitzrayim, asher yalda lo Asnat bat Potifera, Kohen on, et Menashe ve'et Ephraim.
Hmm.
So we're getting lots of good numbers.
Number the names. So when did they become tribes, like all these children?
The children actually don't become tribes.
Heads of tribes, they don't?
The tribes are the sons of Jacob. The children become territories, cities, villages, towns, probably within the tribes.
Oh,
So when all of the descendants of these 12 sons go back up with Moses and Joshua and go back into the land, they're assigned land areas based on the tribes. And then within the tribal areas, they're assigned land within land areas based on the immediate parents of those who are in the Exodus experience, which gets to the whole daughters of Tzlafchad, who are part of a tribe, but will get land within the tribe. And these names, again, we don't know. We do know that they were important because they're in the story. We don't know what their importance was as far as later tribal identity. Are these all the names of tribes and villages that will appear in the later text, or are these names of ancient villages and towns that may no longer even exist except in the story? But in general, we do find in the book of Genesis, a name and a place are combined with each other.
wow.
Before this, we've had stories, and stories are easy to remember because there's drama to them and you're passed on. But isn't this like one of the first instances where we get a long list of data that somehow has to be retold over thousands of years?
Exactly.
I mean, and then you get to Deuteronomy and, all that stuff, which is all names and.
Yeah,
Well, except that Deuteronomy, as far as we know, first appeared in written form.
oh. Oh, so it's much later in
Yes,
time.
well, but remember, it's the text that was found in the temple.
So
But
these
certainly in
names,
Genesis, the genealogies of the earlier generations, we don't get as extensive a list of names. We get the names from Adam to Noah of those who are crucial to the line of Noah only. We get the names from Noah to Terach of those who are crucial to the line. We do get some sidebars. So we get the sons of Cain, and we will get the sons of Ham and Japhet. But we get the extensive list of names of the Shem group, and then the Avraham group, and now the Yaakov group. We will get some names of Esav. We will get some names of the descendants of Yishmael, but the extensive list of names like this are specifically within the Israelite, the Bnei Yisrael.
But there's also been some stories about the tribe of Dan going to both Nigeria and Ethiopia too.
Well, yeah, there's 10 tribes that disappear from the record after the destruction of the Northern Kingdom. But this would have been at the time that it was being told, this would have been names that meant something to the people because they were the names of the villages. This was the descendants of the pilgrims were Needham and Woburn and and you go through the whole list of all of the names of the descendants of the Pilgrims, which would still be alive for us today because those towns do exist.
Mhm.
But the people in Southbridge didn't know about those towns. I mean, so how many years? What was the year of this, and what was the year of the writing? How many years passed? These
So-
were
That's a good
remembered and
question.
passed down.
That's a great question.
I took a course with a professor who said Deuteronomy came first, and the other 4 books of the Torah are the prequels.
Well,
And he-
except that the editor author of the Torah working with Deuteronomy had something to work from. And so the best evidence that we have is that these are stories that predate the writing down of them by hundreds of years.
Not thousands.
Well,
It's the whole biblical period, the pre-Davidic period, is probably no more than 1,000 years.
Mm.
And possibly less. So someplace the Exodus from Egypt at the 12th century, anywhere from the 11th to the 17th century before the Common Era. The writing down is done around the 7th or 8th century before the Common Era, probably.
mm.
Well,
So
thank
do
you,
we-
Certainly
Rabbi.
they're
do we
oral
have the
for
right
hundreds.
names? Do we
They're
have the
oral
right
for
names?
hundreds of years, then they're written down, then they're carried around in the different groups for hundreds of years, and then they're gathered together, and then they're collated, edited, redacted into the text we have.
Oh.
But when
Amazing
did
they
writing
survived.
start?
When I
When-
was taking a New Testament course, the teacher said, in what I had had before, lectures to know about the timing of the stuff from that they were referencing, and I said, no, but I think I had the same course, but it was about the Iliad. And he said, it'll do, yeah.
For those who are, I had a question from a person asking about how old do your child need to be before you tell them that Santa Claus doesn't exist? This is, of course, a Jewish mother and child worried about the child going into the preschool class and announcing to everybody.
My daughter did that when she was 2 to a 5-year-old.
So, yeah, Homer did not write all of the Homeric epics.
Are you sure?
Well, just like they have questions about Shakespeare too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's just to have an industry for unimaginative scholars. They can take another verse of that story.
Well,
Take it up.
Rabbi, thank you again.
All right, take good care,
Thank
everybody.
you.
And don't forget that grief stuff too.
I will
Thank-
send it to you.
Thank you.
I don't know
I
if I'll
sent
be
you all
here.
the link for my bat mitzvah, and my husband's having